How many of you guys know Coach Lobon? How many of you guys had a class or played freshman football for Coach Lobon? Okay. He's kind of an interesting guy, if you hadn't noticed. But I want to share his grandfather's immigration story. Okay. If you look at Coach Lobon, he always wears black. I don't know. Okay. And he's got those dark glasses. He's got the black hair and mustache. I don't know if you've ever seen him take off those glasses. Okay. But imagine him in your mind, which always brings a smile to my face. Where's that guy from? Where's his grandfather from? Because his grandfather immigrated during this time period, in the early 20s. Yeah, where do you think he's from? Italy. No, that's a good guess, though. Yeah. No, but he definitely had a Slavic accent. Further east. Further east. A little bit further. Russia. His grandfather's from Russia. Okay. Now, you know how many Lobons there are in Russia? 0. Okay. So his grandfather actually immigrated through Baltimore, not Ellis Island. And he knew when he came here that the Red Scare was going on, that they did not like Russian people, Slavic people, and his name was an easy giveaway. So when he got off the boat, he saw a dairy truck drive by. It said Lobon Dairy, and he changed his name to Lobon. Moved out to Hays, Kansas, and made a life for himself and his family. Okay, that's where Coach Lobon comes from. They're Russian, okay, which is pretty interesting, all right? But, a lot of people, you German folk, okay, if you go out to some of the cemeteries, like out of St. Mark's and Colwich and so forth, a ton of German names, right? It's like walking through the halls of Bishop Carroll, okay, in the cemetery out there. And what's interesting is a lot of the names, they change over time, like the pronunciation, the spelling, and a lot of that was done for assimilation purposes. You know what I mean? So that people, because the Germans, like during World War I, were not really welcome. And then even in World War II, you had a lot of new German immigrants that had been here just for a few years. And so it was a difficult situation for a lot of German people. Okay. Just like we find with, immigrants from other parts of the world during different times in American history. So you guys with Irish blood, okay, there was a time when the Irish were really discriminated against in this country. Okay. And then, of course, as we were talking about, Catholics as well, just in general. All right. So, I think it's important that we understand this. So, like, when you view these new Afghans coming into the country, and we're going to have at least 100,000, if not more. Did I talk with you guys about chain migration, how that works, right? So, I think we need to be accepting of these folks. Do we need to be weary and kind of on guard? Yeah, possibly. Is that racial profiling? Well, you gotta look out for yourself and your country. And so it's just common sense without being, a hate monger and somebody, that goes out of the way to discriminate against people. Okay. So, moving forward, yesterday I talked about the reactionaries, and I really didn't get to the KKK yet. So let's do that. Okay. Did get into the unions and public sector unions. Oh, I forgot about this. I actually took this picture at Ellis Island in the museum part, and this is from 1924 when we did the National Origins Act. Okay, so this is the decade leading up to, the years up to 1924, and you can see above 50,000, you can see Britain and Germany. So we were taking in a lot of German immigrants, okay? And even Russia here, quite a few, between 10 and 30,000, okay? And then you got your Northern European up here, Italians, between 30 and 50,000 Italians, okay? And so the effects of new immigration legislation described by Senate sponsor of the bill. Chief aim, he states, is to preserve racial type as it exists here today. So only allow people that are already here, you know, to keep what we have as far as the racial makeup of the country. All right. And so the new law shows obviously a great reduction in immigration from Russia, a reduction for Germany, reduction for France, definitely a reduction for Italy. Okay. And then allowing more Northern Europeans in. Okay. So that's just a good graphic to go along with what we just talked about. Okay. And then I took another picture on here, and that is the Reds, or the communists that Palmer rounded up. Okay.
His travels across Western Europe, where he would meet other Marxists and dissidents who were planning the downfall.
During my planned period, I was watching a documentary on the Russian Revolution. Spruce up on my knowledge on that a little bit. It's pretty good. And I got a new speaker system. Bluetooth. Yeah. $50, man. That's it. Okay. It's pretty loud too. Okay. We'll have good sound effects in here. All right. So 249 Reds, right? Set sail. They're exiled to Russia. We talked about how there was no due process for these folks. They were just basically rounded up and shipped out of the country. Now, I'm sure some of them were radicals and anarchists and Bolsheviks, okay? But maybe some of them weren't, okay? Here's another. Arrests exceed 5,000. Okay, so Palmer, you know, who initially is liked and well-regarded, will end up being disliked, okay? Probably not to the extent of Joseph McCarthy in the second Red Scare, who has an ism named after him. Yeah, McCarthyism. I mean, how many people have isms named after them? Not very many. Calvin, Marx. Yeah. There's not many, is it? Okay, so yeah, it's notorious, right? So okay, so the KKK, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. We got any Forrest Gump fans in here? Okay, so you guys know, if you watch that movie closely enough, that the founder of KKK was a guy named Nathan Bedford Forrest. Okay. We actually have a kid at the school named Nathan Forrest. He's a junior. Yeah, yeah. Now, I don't think he's a racist, all right? It's just somebody gave him that name and probably didn't realize. Okay.
Or they did. They said
Or they didn't
Like
like it.
Nathan Forrest. What? Okay.
Did you tell him?
I think I have told him that. I'm sure he knows.
You're like, yeah, you're Nate.
Yeah, I mean, he maybe should go by Nate or something like that, or Nat. But anyhow, guys, the Klan obviously was a response to, you know, the anti-slavery movement and the abolition of slaves and so forth. Now, I'm not making a comparison here, but I am. You guys have heard of the Knights of Columbus, right? Okay. So the Knights of Columbus is a civic organization, yes, of Catholic men. Yes? Yeah. And they do things like they raise money for causes and charities and so forth, right? Okay. Guys, there were aspects of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, that were of a civic nature, that were not so much focused on anti-Negro, anti-Jew, anti-Catholic, and so forth. Okay. Now I have S and W here, South and West, but guys, in the Midwest, but during this time period in the early 20s, there were a lot of Klans people in the Midwest as well. And so it spread. Look at this, 4.5 million members of the Klan. That's a very large organization. Now, all of them didn't go around lynching people and committing terror, but there were people in this group that did. And so those others were associated with this group, which became a hate group and really a terror organization. Okay, the way they bullied communities. Okay, the problem here, guys, is that if you're a black person and you're on trial, now we're innocent until proven guilty, right? But you're on trial in Birmingham, Alabama, Jackson, Mississippi. How do you know that there are not members of the Klan sitting on that jury? Or the judge himself is a member of the Klan? Tell you a quick story. We have a former justice to the United States Supreme Court named Hugo Black, which is kind of ironic, and he's Jewish. Hugo Black is a Jewish Supreme Court judge from Alabama. And when he went through his confirmation hearings, the Senate has to approve these judges, these federal judges, okay? They asked him, Judge Black, why were you a member of the KKK? And he said, well, I was a defense attorney in Birmingham, Alabama. So he was representing black people, okay? And he said, if I was a member of the Klan, I had a better chance of better representing my clients. So I joined. Seriously. And he was confirmed by the United States Senate to become a member of the Supreme Court. Okay? So it was very pervasive. I mean, there were a lot of Klans people. Yeah. What? I don't know. Yeah. But these guys were, like I said, reactionaries like I had over here yesterday. Now, I mentioned some things like, you know, dancing and music and liquor, alcohol. Some of them were more radical than others, as fundamentalists are. Some are very fundamentalist, some are not. But this, I just pulled off the internet, guys. This is Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Okay? And what? 1924, Flag Day. Right? Publicizing like a picnic. Okay? And they've got music and lectures. One of those were about. Okay? But it is a religious organization. Okay? Like the Knights of Columbus is a religious group. Okay? But they're a white Protestant group, you understand. And so they're going to target, you know, all of these groups. Okay? And now finally, when we start to see this violence and so forth against these groups, the newspapers finally get to telling people what people in this group are up to. Okay, and the Indiana Grand Dragon, the Grand Dragon is like the head of a state chapter of the KKK. Okay, and he was convicted of killing, I believe it was a teenage girl. Okay, and the newspapers began to expose the Klan for what it had become, what it was doing, and the numbers dropped. Now, we'll see a resurgence in the Klan in the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, but nothing like this, 4.5 million people. And today, the Klan is a shell of its former self. Okay? These people are ignorant. Okay? And if you ever see a Klan's person interviewed or something like that, you'll pick up on it really fast just how ignorant they are. Okay? But guys, in this country, you can be a member of the KKK. You can be a communist. You can be a fascist. You can be an anarchist in this country. Hell, you can even be a Nazi in this country. It's a free country. And we have the right to shame those people, which is generally what we should do, and point out their ignorance. Okay? And I think as a society, we have done that, which has reduced these people and the numbers and so forth. Okay, so that's kind of a good thing, right? That they're not what they used to be. All right, but they were very powerful, very strong, and it was hard for people, especially in the South, to get justice if you were African American. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to tell you the story of Sacco and Vanzette. These are two Italian immigrants, okay? Now, I'm going to be honest with you, okay? When I was a first-year teacher, and this was in the stuff I was covering, this is our old history book for this class. It's a pretty good book. I mean, some of the commentary is very well written, descriptive, and so forth. So when I was teaching this class, literally, guys, I was less than a full day ahead of my students. Because one of the toughest jobs in the world is a first-year teacher. Okay, so I would be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, going through the textbook and making outline notes. I'd come to school before school and get to the copy machine, get one of those see-through sheets. What do you call them like that? Transparency. Look at you. And then I'd put it on this. Okay? And then I go home, get some sleep that night, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and get the notes ready for that day. Okay, I was a few hours ahead of my students. Year 2, had all the transparency. Made life a lot easier. Okay? So I don't remember Sacco and Vanzette from college. I don't remember studying them. I don't remember Sacco and Vanzette from high school. So I'm just going off what the book says. You know what I'm saying? Belong to anybody? What about that? It's sitting there for a week. I'm going to take it home and give it to my wife. I mean, seriously, it's been sitting up. You seen it up there? It's been up there every day for a week. Okay, so if you guys will indulge me, I was a bad teacher. Okay, because I trusted everything the book said. And I didn't do enough research that first year, most likely because I didn't have time. So once I had the transparencies done, I could do what a good teacher does and read about the stuff I'm teaching about or watch a documentary on it so I'm more informed for my students, right? So let me read you what this book says about Sacco and Vanzette. Listen to the language, okay? Every epoch in American history has its martyrs. Their names enter the folklore. John Brown was a willing martyr in the fight against slavery. You guys remember crazy John Brown? In this later age, Niccolo Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzette, two Italian-born immigrants, became unwilling martyrs in the struggle for equal justice for all. In a 1920 holdup that took place in Boston, Massachusetts shoe factory, a paymaster and a guard were killed. Shortly afterwards, Sacco and Vanzette were arrested. Both were gentlemen with no criminal record. But they believed in the philosophy of anarchy. They were tried, found guilty, and sentenced to die. There was no solid evidence against them, and it was widely thought that they were really victims of a frenzied fear of radicals and aliens or immigrants. The belief in the innocence of Sacco and Vanzette was so widespread that in 1927, the governor of Massachusetts finally had to appoint a committee to review the fairness of the trial. But the committee itself was loaded with prejudice. The author of its report was Harvard President Lawrence Lowell, long an officer of the Immigration Restriction League, who was well known for his belief in the superiority of the Anglo-Saxon people. It's not surprising this committee reported that the trial had been fair. When Sacco and Vanzette were executed, millions of Americans mourned. They believed that the two gentle Italian immigrants were victims of fear and prejudice. So as I teach this, guys, I'm like, well, this is horrible. All this anti-immigrant, all this Red Scare stuff leads to the execution of 2 innocent, gentle Italian immigrants. Yeah, I know they believed in anarchy, but it's okay. They didn't commit the murders, right? Okay. So a couple years later, I'm reading a book called The History of the American People by Paul Johnson. Okay? And in this book, he talks about a book that was written about this case called Boston. It was written by a guy named Upton Sinclair. Upton Sinclair. Does that ring a bell to any of you? There was a book you may have read in English called The Jungle. It used to be required reading. I read it when I was in high school. At least I was supposed to. The Jungle is about the meatpacking industry. Yeah. Ringing a bell? Yeah, the meatpacking industry and just how unsanitary it was, right? So like people, you're cutting meat and stuff, so people would lose fingers and it would fall into the vat of meat. There were rats in there and rat feces in your food and your meat, okay, from the meatpacking industry. Now, he sold millions of copies of this book, and then the fact that it became required reading for decades in this country, he sold even more. Okay. Now, Upton Sinclair wrote a 2-volume novel on this. Later interviewed about the book, Upton Sinclair said, when my researchers and I did this book, we were left with no doubt that these 2 men had committed the murders. Yet they wrote the book proclaiming their innocence. Why? Made a good story and it sold more books. So The Jungle about the meatpacking industry, do you think maybe they did a little exaggeration to, spruce it up a little bit? You know what I mean? And then I'm reading in a magazine a few years after that, and there's an estate sale in California. You guys know what an estate sale is, right? Somebody died and all their stuff's there to buy. And the guy that had died had been one of the lawyers of Sacco and Vanzette. And they found in their personal letters describing how the 2 carried out the robbery and murders. But I taught my students that these people were innocent and they were executed. Okay? So what's the moral of the story? Don't trust me. Right. Don't trust what you hear or read. You need to double check it. You know what I mean? You need to be a critic of what you're reading. Don't be gullible. Okay? And so, that's what I try and do. I'm trying to find out more information on this stuff, as I go through and continue to teach about these guys, okay? So little things that we learn. Guys, there were protests in Japan about this execution. Certainly in Italy, there were protests all over the world, and it's what's called a cause célèbre. Okay, let's talk about George Floyd. Okay, everybody knows who George Floyd is, right? Okay, do you know all the circumstances there? You saw the cop kneeling on his neck. Okay, but I think the cop is guilty of really doing damage to this guy. Did he die on the scene? No, he did not die on the scene. So he didn't eventually his knee was taken off his neck. Here we go.
Excuse me? Coach Ebright?
Yeah.
Can you send Noah Gold, Anna Wineland, and Timothy Goebel to the nurse's office?
Okay.
Thank you.
Go. Yes. Hopefully you can get it cleared up. I don't know how it's going to go. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know.
I'm not even vaccinated.
mean, maybe you should.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, all right. Really bad for Anna.
Yeah. They have their first game tonight. West and South.
We only have 2 home games
You only have two
Seriously?
games?
tonight, and then we got one more, which would be senior night. All right, yeah, so I forget what I was talking about. But yeah, so this is just kind of one of those things. It's a cause celebre. So we were talking about George Floyd, right? And I mean, guys, police brutality is a thing, right? And there are instances where police racially profile and mistreat African Americans. And I think there's no question we need to look at our excuse me, our justice system and how it works. It definitely favors the rich. Okay, poor people, as far as being able to hire good attorneys and that sort of thing to get off of certain situations, is a thing, man. And disproportionately, African Americans are poorer. Okay, so that means when the justice system comes to your door and you meet the justice system, you're not on equal standing with the wealthy. And that's a problem, I think, in society. And it's something that I think we need to address. Guys, I don't have the answer. I don't know how we address that. Different communities are trying different things to address, like getting rid of bail, which to me is crazy and dangerous, because you guys know what bail is. Like, if you're arrested for a violent crime and they think you're likely to do it again, they'll to get out of jail before your trial, you can post bail. So like if you get busted for, something petty, something small, like stealing a bike, stealing a bicycle, okay? The bond for you is gonna be like $1,000. So you gotta come with $1,000 or come up with $100, get a bail bondsman to put up the other $900. You get out of jail until your date of your trial. If you commit a heinous crime, your bail is gonna be higher, like $100,000. So you gotta come up with 10% of that, 10 grand, and then get a bail bondsman to put up the other 90, and you're gonna need collateral for that, like your house, to get out of jail until your trial. But if you're poor, you're stuck in jail until your trial. Now, a speedy trial by constitutional standards is 120 days. Okay? Now, granted, your defense team, your attorneys are going to want time to build a case to defend you. So you don't want that trial to be tomorrow. You know what I mean? So a speedy trial. So disproportionately, wealthy people are able to get out of jail, hire quality attorneys, and where poor people get stuck. And then they get stuck with a public defender, that may or may not put in a lot of time and work on their case to defend them. And so, doing away with bail, which they're doing in New York City right now. So what happens if you commit a crime, you assault somebody, they arrest you, they take you down, they book you, and then they kick you loose, hoping you show up for your trial. They're doing the same thing in San Francisco. In California, San Francisco, you can go in and steal $999 worth of stuff from Best Buy. They can call the cops. Cops are not going to show up unless it's over $1,000. They're not showing up. So you look at Walgreens and stuff like that in San Francisco, they're shutting down, which is hurting the community because people don't have access to like the Walgreens. You know what I mean? Because so much stuff is being stolen, you call the cops, they don't come. People know they just get away, walk right in. Have you seen the videos of this? You just walk right in and get a bag of stuff and start doing this, walk out. San Francisco, okay? It's crazy. I don't know what the answer is to fix our justice system there, but it's not that, in my opinion. But according to some, it is, okay? So this is, like George Floyd, you're vaccinated. You know what happened to our friends? I should let coach know.
Don't have like a football game or something?
He
Quit football this year. Yeah. Is exactly. It's a waste of my time.
I don't know why. I know.
Bear, that is Bear, B-E-A-R, E-R?
Yep.
English has never been my thing. Yeah.
There's nothing. No bail. Did you just get it off?
Hey, listen, people, I mean, you should wear your mask. Like your mama wants you to. And if you guys are worried, like you got stuff, you got seats over here where there's no other people sitting. Okay, I mean, feel free to spread out if you want. I don't care where you sit. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, hopefully none of them get it. Nobody gets it from the one, so. Okay, I'm recording this. Okay. All right, yeah. 2021. An extension of 2020. I didn't get this, let's stop here. I'm gonna catch second hour up to you, okay? They're still a little bit behind. Okay,